Hola todos, how are we doing? Welcome to I guess this is our second video. And I'm going to see if I can answer some of your questions. Before I get to your questions, let's do a little admin. So we are going to be working on questions for this set of articles here for marketing management. As you know, this article I did not get to you guys in time for this set of week's readings. However, it just came back from Interlibrary Loan and it is now up on Blackboard. When you get a chance, please download it. Some of you will be assigned to blogging for your topic talk, and I'll put that schedule up within the next day or so. And if you would like, you could use this article. I'd be comfortable with that. Now, again, class, as I said in the last email that I sent to you guys, I apologize for all the confusion that we are having with the articles. In previous semesters, I never provided any articles to the class, and I made the class go out and find all of them. I thought this semester I could make it easier by providing you the articles, and it seems like that's not working out all that well. And I apologize. I truly do. My suggestion is, if you can't open up the file that's on Blackboard, just use the methodology that I created that short video for you. Go into the digital library and get a copy of the article. I did get this article. It just came back. This one is now up on Blackboard. And this one is also a PDF on Blackboard. And these two you're going to have to go get. I think that's the easiest way to go say it. Okay? Again, class, I apologize for that. So, one other admin thing before we get there, before we get to where we're going. Hold on. For future reference, I think the easiest way to turn in your deliverable to me from your team, remember all 3 or 4 of you are going to consolidate your nuggets and consolidate your questions and send me one document. You know, give me a header like this. Nuggets, questions, we move on. Nuggets, learning organization, questions, learning organization, we move on. Nuggets, chief marketing technology, questions, chief marketing technology, we move on. Nuggets, marketing machine, question, marketing machine, we're good. It's just easier for me to go through the document and clearly pull out your questions, as opposed to me interpreting everything. And unless you have a question mark there or not, I'm not 100% sure it's a question or not. Okay? So this is the one I'm going to do, is I then create a document where I have up on screen that we can talk through these. So the first article we're going to do is this market-oriented article. These are the specific questions from the market-oriented that I could easily tell and pull from the 5 teams. Okay, and I'm going to get to them in a second. Before I do, but give me a couple seconds there on the history of this article. Market orientation, in my opinion, is the premier strategy of all strategies when it comes to business. You know, this article, although it was written in 1988, created a firestorm, not only in the marketing literature, but also in the management literature. This was the one that, if we were to go into the academic literature, the Journal of Marketing, the Journal of Marketing Research, and God knows how many other journals followed after that, 1990, 1991, 92, 93, 94, this concept of being market-oriented really changed the literature. And I'll summarize it to this. Firms who are market-oriented are successful. Firms who are not market-oriented struggle. I can't say it any clearer than that. If you want to be good, you need to be market-oriented. If you're not market-oriented, you're going to be mediocre at best and probably poor on average. You know, I can't say it any simpler than that. Now, this article was written in kind of a funny tone. I liked it. I think it's a very good introduction to this topic of market-oriented. Now, throughout the article, there is some elements of market orientation. Now, knowing what I know, I simplified it in this blog post, which is the one that I sent you. If you want to be market-oriented, there's 3 components to being market-oriented. You need to have an incredibly strong orientation towards customers. You need to have an incredibly strong external orientation towards competition. So, if you're market-oriented, you are outwardly facing towards customers, competition. Most firms actually do item 1 and 2 well. I actually said that right here, didn't I? 3 is the one that firms screw up. Very few firms have the strong internal communication structure that one silo learns about something and this silo can persuade the other silos to act. Because they're silos. It's politics. And firms that do not have incredibly strong internal communication and talk to each other a whole lot struggle. If you want to be market-oriented, you're external with customers, you're external with competition, you're externally oriented towards the marketplace, customers and competition. And you get that information, you bring it into the corporation, and you act on it. And the major functions of the firm don't get defensive in their silos. Just like in this article, the salesperson had to get fired because he or she, I can't remember, was getting too defensive in their silo, wasn't cooperating. This is a very nice primer for market orientation. So let's get to your questions. What is the best way to avoid the barriers that sometimes form between divisions of a company? A barrier exists because one silo, one division, another silo, another division are protecting their own turf. They're not doing it for the greater good of the firm. If you can present the argument that it's for the greater good of the firm and both silos will benefit, that's how you get past the barrier. Suggesting top functional managers meet once a year seems impractical. It makes sense to have subject matter experts, outside managers, meet more on a frequent basis. There are companies that meet daily. Apple has a Monday morning 9 a.m. meeting every week. Google has their, LinkedIn has theirs Friday afternoons at 3. The companies that are market oriented, they meet, they have an all hands on deck, any questions, 2 hours, 90 minutes a week with everyone. And the top managers don't meet once a year, once a quarter. They meet once a week, if not more frequently. How else are you going to get that inter-firm communication? What are the best techniques, metrics to choose your most important customers? Now, I'm not going to dodge this question, but we are doing 2 sections of CRM that exactly talk about this. But every firm has to decide what is their most important metric. Is it revenue? Is it profit? Is it customer retention? You need to decide. It's part of your strategy. But you will definitely segment the marketplace, which is the first step in all CRM processes. And you decide what is important to you and which customers are therefore important to you. Most of the time, we're talking about revenue and profitability. Wolverine was losing money on its 3rd largest account. It seemed obvious to cut ties or raise prices. You have to decide as a company your strategy. What are you going to prioritize? Most firms do prioritize revenue and margin. Most firms do. But there are other things that are more important. Something else for you guys to think about with Wolverine. Let's say this is a manufacturing company, and maybe they're losing money on the 3rd largest account, but if they got rid of this account, and therefore the volume of product would drop, the profitability with customers 1 and customers 2, the largest account and the second largest account, might drop significantly because they're not producing from a manufacturing operations perspective the same number of units, therefore they're not buying and getting the price discounts on scale. It might completely mess up the balance sheet, and we might be significantly less profitable with the biggest account and the second account if we get rid of the third account. You have to run the numbers. And there are many companies that run businesses at a loss because they have to, because they make other parts of the firm profitable. Next question. Can a company be market-oriented in a sense that all functions contribute to the marketing efforts? No, and no. It's not marketing-oriented. It's market-oriented. We need to get rid of all the silos. It's one of the problems that I had with the articles last week, and it's the other reasons why we were talking about the ultimate marketing machine and the chief marketing technologist. It's not the marketing department doing this. It's all departments doing this. We are all externally oriented towards the firm. Everyone should be doing the marketing. Everyone should be market-oriented. The finance function needs to do the finance stuff. The accounting function needs to do the accounting stuff. The marketing function needs to do the market stuff. But the accounting, marketing, and finance need to do what's best for their customers given the competition. And they talk to each other, that's the 3 components of the market orientation, to make sure that they're doing the most optimal thing. How does an employee approach a manager if he or she has criticism to share? Oh boy. It depends on the manager. Some managers can't hear it. But in reality, if the manager's so worried about their own turf, and if he or she has criticism or a recommendation and the manager doesn't hear it, but the recommendation is actually for the betterment of the firm, then there's a problem there. You either leave the organization or you go around the manager. Or you do it anonymously. If the manager is so worried about their own turf, then they're not market oriented. You have a problem. What's the difference between market driven and customer oriented? Well, if we go back to, we know what market orienting is, okay? So we want market driven versus market driving, okay? Market driven is sort of what market orientation is. You understand what the current customer needs and wants, and you find out a way to fulfill them. This is kind of what market orienting is. Market driving is you change the marketplace. Because of what you've done, the market now functions the way you did it. And the perfect example in the last 10 years is, the idea of a smartphone. And even though we had smartphones before the iPhone, when the iPhone came out in 2007, but then in 2008 introduced the App Store, and we got the app economy, that changed not only the smartphone marketplace, it changed all communication. It changed the entire computer market to the point where more people are using these devices as their computer than this device that I'm talking to you with. You guys know you use this more as a computing function than you use this thing. That's market driving as opposed to what market orientation is, market driven. Both of these things are good. Okay, they're both good. Oh, that's articles. To be market oriented, you have to be customer oriented. There's no way. It's the first component of being market oriented. External orientation towards customer. I'm not sure what this question is, and I appreciate the team, whoever wrote this question, if you want to get back to me, and perhaps I can answer it in an email. I don't know where this is coming from, and I don't agree with this at all. Everything that I've said would not agree with this at all, so. Yep. Sorry about that. See? It's changing how we communicate by sending me updates. Question. How do you join forces join the forces of a disjointed, unorganized organization that is failing? Well, it really starts with getting everyone on the same page and getting people out of their functional silos and getting people to talk, to work towards a common goal that is both best for their customers, given what the competitive pressures are in the marketplace. And you have to think about the resources of, SWOT, what you do well, strength, and what you don't do well, weaknesses. If you can't get everybody on the same page and motivate towards a common goal, then it's going to stay an unorganized organization. But good leaders, good leadership, has a way of communicating a common goal to get people to follow. And that's how you get rid of silos, and that's how you move forward when you're unorganized. When we talk about a company's understanding of its markets, is that the demographics of each customer, location, age? It's all of it. The market is just not, it's every component to the market. It's the customer, how they buy, how they spend, what they do with the product. In some cases, even reverse logistics, how do they dispose of the product? You have to think about that in terms of what your customers are offering. All of it. That's what market orientation is. What's the difference between market-driven and market-oriented? Is there a difference? I think I answered that question already. All right, let's move on to the next article, Building a Learning Organization. Now, if you notice, this is another classic. This was 1993, and I always loved this concept of a learning organization, because if you think about the three components of market orientation, that third one, the incredibly strong inter-firm communication, if you have a company that has a culture of constantly sharing and constantly learning and getting information from customers and competitors and bringing it in and kind of going like this, iterating and moving forward, that's a learning organization. You can't be a learning organization unless you're MO. It's pretty hard not to be. Now, that's why I originally started selecting this article for the class. It fits so well with market orientation. But this concept of a learning organization, we're going to see as we go forward through this semester. We're going to talk about it in CRM. We're going to talk about it when we do the Internet of Things. We're going to talk about it when we do big data. We're going to talk about it in all the examples. And I have some questions here that I'm going to, give me some examples of learning organizations, and let's talk about that. Although this article references Xerox GE, would be considered a bit dated. Not GE. GE is probably still one of the best learning organizations out there. What are some current examples of learning organizations creating out there? Now, Google cannot exist unless it learns. There's no way for Netflix to offer the recommendations unless it learns. There's no way then Target can do what it does, that CVS can do what it does. Kroger is more profitable in a zero razor-thin margin marketplace, supermarkets, because of the data, and they learn. This is an article from 1993 talking about the Xeroxes and the GEs of the world in terms of more of a market-oriented type philosophy. But this learning idea, which is spectacular, is really what good tech firms do in and out. And you cannot be a very good Web 2.0 firm unless you are learning about your customers. Benchmarking is a truly good tool for innovation, or will it lead companies with mimicking each other? Are best practices those given organizations competitive advantages, publicly broadcasted? Well, here's the issue. You have to benchmark because the marketplace is already accepting a certain threshold for product. Now, the hard part is if we go back to Apple, people have been trying to benchmark the iPhone for years. And for the first couple years, they kept trying to meet the benchmark of Apple. Not only were they not meeting it, every time they would come somewhat close, within 6 months on the high side, Apple had the next iteration to go forward. Now, you can say these days that if we benchmark the smartphone markets, they are more similar than not at this point in time compared to, say, 2009, 2010, or even 2011. But by 2013, they were pretty similar. By 2014, the competitors were pretty similar. And the only thing that is keeping going them forward is keeping, the next new model that moves the bar. Benchmarking to be equal with the competitors only going to get you so far if the competitor keeps moving ahead. You need to benchmark and go beyond. Otherwise, benchmarking's silly or not as useful. Aside from transferring subject matter experts from division to division, how can companies effectively transfer knowledge that is possessed by a select few and ensure that it's properly absorbed? Well, I think this is a technology thing, and something as simple as a wiki, something as simple as a corporate blog can do this function. It's called institutional knowledge. One of the books that I read over the summer is the Checklist Manifesto. I'm enamored with this book if someone needs a good book recommendation for the semester. And the Checklist Manifesto addresses this head on. So you don't miss one of these things. Something. Knowledge transfer. Do you think an employee should come to a company with a learning mentality, or should they be trained specifically for that company? I sure hope that the firm already has a culture, and it is a culture. You can't be market-oriented unless the culture within your firm values those traits. You can't have a learning organization unless your firm has the culture of learning and moving forward with the information. I sure hope the culture is there, and I hope that they get trained. What are some of the strategies to encourage a learning environment of the closed-minded manager? I think we answered this before in the first question. You really have to tell people what's in it for them. If you can't tell a closed-minded manager that you have something really good that would improve the division, and he or she won't listen to you, you go over their head. You really do. Okay. The Chief Marketing Technologist. That's not the Chief Marketing Technologist article. This is the Chief Marketing Technologist article. I like this kind of idea. I'm not enamored with this article. I'm very happy that it's in the literature. I'm very happy that it's in Harvard Business Review. I'm very happy that it's a 2014 article. This is the first time that I've ever included it in the readings for the semester. But to me, the idea of a chief marketing technologist, this is the same issue we were talking about last week. This was written by a marketing person for a marketing audience. It wasn't written by a marketing person for a market-oriented audience. This falls into the same trap that why is it always the marketing person trying to save the world? It should be everyone trying to save the world. That said, there's still some interesting things here, here and there. The article mentions that there are over 1,000 marketing software providers. The number's got to be higher than that. Are there any major players in this realm? Is it SAP or is it Oracle? You would be. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, this is too broad of a question. Saying that there is software out there, or marketing software, or anything along those lines. It's like saying, okay, I need a car. And, in the United States, there's over 275 models, and if we include the entire world, there's probably somewhere between 450 and 500 different models of car. So, yeah, go buy a car. Here's 500 models, go buy a car. Well, what do you need? Do you need an economy car? You need a large car? Do you need a truck? It depends on what you need. Software is not software. App software versus desktop software are totally different ballgames. Enterprise software versus B2C software are totally different ballgames. It depends on the function. It really depends on the function. There's 25 marketing software providers in the advertising space alone. Do you have any real-world examples where a company bet big on expanding its technology-enabled marketing and failed? And failed. and failed. Well, I don't know if this is really where you're getting with your question, but I mean, if we look at any of the recent areas, I mean, this was 2007, 2008. Remember Palm? Palm was actually a pretty good device. It had many operating system advantages that the iPhone did not. It was pretty solid technology. It was pretty nice looking hardware, and it still failed. Now, that's a hardware-software thing, and that was actually a distribution logistics problem that sunk that company. But we could talk about, Hewlett-Packard trying to make tablets. Who else? Microsoft is actually struggling very much that the idea of this device and a desktop and all software being bought this particular way, that you used to buy $300 or $400 package and install it with a license, as opposed to, once a year at $9.99. If you think about all the things that you've done on computing wise, we actually don't need a Microsoft OS anymore, do we? If we had a Chromebook and we had a web browser, we could probably do about 90% of what we really need to do. We don't need Windows 8.1, do we? Here's a company that's betting big, and I sure hope they move fast to the cloud, because that's what's going to keep Microsoft, because Office is still doing really well, but their browser is not, and their OS is not, and they're doing better in the tablet space, but they're, even that's $8 billion acquisition of Nokia, you could call that a bust, Do you think the chief marketing technology is a position that should be middle or upper management? I'm going to talk about this question. It has to be this part of the C-suite. It doesn't work unless you have the C, CMO, COO, CEO, CFO, CAO. If you're not part of that C-suite, then this position, the way it's described in this article, is no. It's not going to work. Considering that digital marketing seems to be the most important technology-powered investment, do we make a conclusion that the rise in digital budgets should bring considerable profit for companies? If not for all companies, do we need to limit the budget? The first half of this question, no issues. Digital marketing is increasing exponentially. However, it does not mean that digital marketing necessarily means more profit. There's a multitude of things why the firm cannot be profitable, even if the revenue stream from digital is really strong. There needs to be a little bit more there. And I have another article, and I wrote this one a long time ago. This is February 2012. And I'm always on the lookout for companies that, I thought it would be Procter & Gamble, because each year Procter & Gamble would decrease their traditional advertising budget, network TV, by X percentage, and then digital would go up. And I actually thought it would be P&G would be one of the first major firms that digital would outpace the traditional. It would be more digital than traditional. And actually it was Nike. Look at this quote right here. Nike spending on TV and print advertising in the U.S. has dropped 40% in 3 years, even as its total budget has increased and hit a record of $2.4 billion last year. This is Nike. Remember the 1980s, the early 90s? The best ads on television were Nike ads. Nike were brilliant television advertisers in a top-down fashion. And they got out of the game because the return is not there. And my phone's ringing, and it's my mom. Talk to her later.
Call from Layla.
Okay? If you go to my blog and you just type in Nike here, this article is going to pop up again. It's really good. This is a very good example of a Topic Talk article. If you want to just click this little spot here, you would see the full article when it was published in Fortune, I believe. You know.
So give Mom a call, 10 and 4. Bye.
Why do we not put marketing and technology under a single leader rather than establish a... Why do we not put marketing and technology under a single leader rather than establish a CMT? Why do we not put... Isn't a CMT the marketing and the technology under a single leader? I'm kind of not sure what's happening with this question. If you have any more, if you want some clarifications, you want to send me an email, I'll send it back to you. I'm not sure what you're asking there. I mean, the whole idea of the CMT is very few things marketing is doing without it being digitized. You know, marketing is becoming all digital. It really, really is. You know, what kind of training is provided to social networking? How do we engage followers? How to use the network? I apologize, but this is way too broad of a question. You know, every company has different policies when it comes to social and what they're using it for. Some firms are using it for a revenue stream. Some firms are using it for customer service. Some firms are using it just for couponing. Some firms are using it for just brand advertising, like Oreo. You know, and depending on what you're using it for in your strategy, you would have different ways to engage. You know, is there a certain area of IT that would be beneficial for a marketing student to study that would be helpful in bridging a knowledge gap between IT and marketing besides the undergraduate degree in IT? Well, I think this class and the philosophy of this class is really the bridging the gap. You need strategy. You know, marketing tactics, IT tactics. You need a strategy and a philosophy to meld the marketing with the IT. And you're going to get lots of it this semester. And we're going to talk about first market orientation. And then we're going to talk about CRM. And then we're going to talk about experience, which we're going to get to in a second. These are all things that are highly beneficial to have under your belt as part of your toolkit for IT and for marketing to go forward. Is there a leading software firm or product that specializes probably in analytical data mining and information? How are these firms and products found? Obviously not in the yellow pages, if you get my drift. I find out about them in webinars. There's a ton of analytic firms out there. One of the most common area of analytics out there is social media listening. So there's Radiant6, there's Trax, which is what I used when we were doing the Super Bowl stuff, Hootsuite, Spreadfast, Sprout Social. Who am I missing? I think they're all the big players. And these are incredible listening. You know, they have the raw feed. They have the API for Twitter, for Facebook, for LinkedIn, for all the social networks. And if something is tweeted about it, you can go back and search the entire history of Twitter to find out about it. You know, both historical and current. Social media listening, that's a great... There's other software areas too, I mean, besides analytics. But let's keep going here. The last article. Nope. Yep. Here we go. Can you define marketing metrics, share of wallet, share of voice, share of experience in more depth? These are all things that are going to come up again in CRM, in the CRM module. But basically, we want to get more of our existing customers to buy from us. So we want a higher percentage market share-wise of their overall spending, of their overall pro-social behavior on social, word of mouth. The experience thing, this one's harder to define. But I'm very happy that... Here are we. page 58. This idea we're here in this part of the article when you were talking about the experience. When we talk about connecting and we talk about the two branding modules, this is a nice little foreshadowing to some articles we're going to read in about 2 or 3 weeks from now. Experience is worth its weight in gold, you know. And we have the question here, can the value of customer experience be quantified? Hell yeah. Now, it depends on what you want to define as experience. But if any of you have been to Disney in the last, 12 months, and you put one of them bracelets on, that is how Disney can quantify something. How was your experience? Did you get into more rides versus someone who wasn't wearing one of these things? How was your Fast Pass acquisition? And Disney just finds 18 million different ways to improve your experience. And now they're tracking it. They're tracking you. This thing, which we're going to have at least 2 or 3 articles on much deeper into the semester, I like to call the Internet of Things. Like this Internet of Things, which is making the non-digital digital. And soon Apple's going to be giving us one of these things. And we have excellent Fitbit watches, and Google's got a watch out there, and Pebble's got a watch out there. It's coming. How do companies like Philip Morris inspire their teams to work on promoting a product such as cigarettes that are controversial and perhaps employees on the team do not believe in? There's no denying that cigarettes are controversial, but some people don't have an issue. They might be smokers. And they might just say something as simple as, it's free will. If you don't want to smoke, and there's all these warnings we have to put on there, hey, it's a free country. You can do what you want. You can have 2 cigarettes a day, and is that really going to kill you? People might rationalize it. I have a hard time thinking that if someone was completely anti-smoking, that they would even apply for a job at Philip Morris. But there are many people that are, and you might know some of these people, they're at a company that maybe they're not working for a product that is controversial. It's not cigarettes, it's not alcohol, it's not something along those lines. But maybe they don't love the company or love the job. But it's not like the marketplace out there is gangbusters, and you kind of got to wait it out a little bit. I'm a Phillies fan, and I'm sure there's a lot of players on the Phillies team that know they're not going to win the World Series this year, and they're trying to figure out a way to get off the team because they don't want to wait 3-4 years for the ship to turn around. But they have a guaranteed contract that pays them X millions of dollars. So they're not going to complain that much, because what are they going to do? Retire and give up all that money? It's trade-offs. Can the value of periods be quantified? We answered that. Is there a 3-year growth a valid measure for distinguishing high-performing organizations from low-performing organizations? Can we use the 3-year growth revenue as the only measure? No. Revenue growth is a good measure. I don't know if just 3 years is fine. It depends on the company. We're going to talk about a lot of different elements that you can look at a company from, starting with the CRM module. Revenue growth is good. It's a step in the right direction. It is not the only possible thing. Share of voice. It's not just revenue growth. One of my favorite metrics is customer retention, or the lack of a leaky bucket, your churn number. Okay? All right, class. This was a very good first start. I appreciate the questions. If you have more questions, you shoot me email, and I will be helpful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Let me turn this off.